Hello and welcome to the Introduction to MEX. Here at MEX, we pride ourselves on producing maintenance management software that is easy to use, even for people who have relatively limited experience with maintenance management systems. While keeping it simple, we've included enough functionality and flexibility to make the system effective in achieving your maintenance outcomes. And finally, MEX is a very cost-effective package to implement, not just in terms of licensing costs, but in terms of time taken to implement the software, including configuration and user training. We will start our presentation by looking at some of the main modules of MEX: the Asset Register, Work Orders, History and Preventative Maintenance. We will start with the Asset Register. The Asset Register, in its most basic form, is a list of the assets that you are responsible for maintaining. Once an asset has been defined in the system, the various maintenance tasks that you perform against that asset can be recorded as work orders. When a work order has been physically completed, it is closed off so that the work order moves from the maintenance backlog to the asset's history. I access the MEX Asset Register by clicking on the Assets icon on the MEX main menu. In the Asset Register, I can see that all of my maintainable assets are listed out on the left-hand side of the screen in a hierarchical fashion. I can drill down through this hierarchy to locate the individual asset that I wish to look at. There's no limit to the depth or width of this hierarchy. When I select an asset, I can see all the information that relates to the asset on the right-hand side of the screen. For example, I have the Details tab, which shows the physical details of the asset. The Work Orders tab, which shows the maintenance backlog that exists for the asset. The Preventative Maintenance tab that shows the routine maintenance that is associated with it, and the History tab, which will show me the maintenance history of the asset. There are a range of other tabs including parts lists, drawings, movements, fuel usage, and so on. But most of the time, you'll be concentrating on those 4 tabs. When I look at the details of a MEX asset, which I can access by selecting the asset and clicking on the Details icon on the bottom of the screen, I can see that I have a wide range of fields that I can use to record information about the asset. For example, I can record serial numbers and barcode numbers on the Extended tab. If I'm maintaining a vehicle, I have a tab that contains vehicle-specific information. I can record warranty and depreciation, and if I don't have a field that I wish to use, I also have an unlimited number of user-defined fields that can be added to each type of asset. Even though there are a large number of fields that can be used, the majority of the useful information will be contained on the Details tab. Here I have things such as the asset type, which indicates what category the asset belongs to. For example, this is a tank. The manufacturer, the model number if I have one, the account code, which is a cost center that any expenditure recorded against the asset will accrue to, and a range of other fields. If I populate this tab, then I will get 90% of the functionality in MEX. I can exit the details by clicking on the red X in the top right-hand side of the screen. Once I have an asset defined in the system, then I can begin to create work orders and maintenance schedules for that asset. We will now have a look at work orders. The work order is the most basic record in a maintenance system. It represents a maintenance task that is to be performed on the asset. For example, one of my forklifts might need to have its tyres replaced. I would add this job into my maintenance backlog by creating a work order. In the work order, you would bring such information as the asset being worked on, the description of the job, the type and priority of the job, the labour and material requirements for the job, the actual and estimated costs, and the date that the job is scheduled for. When the work has been completed, the work order is closed off, meaning that it's moved from your backlog of outstanding work to the work history of the asset. The work order listing is accessed from the MEX menu here. This listing contains all the open work orders in your system, which is effectively your current maintenance backlog. In this listing, we can create new work orders, print or email them, close them off to history, or a number of other functions. Work orders can arrive in this listing in a number of ways. They can be automatically generated by your routine maintenance schedules, they can be created as a result of an approved maintenance request, or they can be manually created, as we're about to do now. The first step in manually creating a work order is to click on the New button in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. This will open up a blank work order details screen for me to enter my new job into. The only mandatory fields for a new work order are the asset that is to be worked on and a description of the work that is to be performed, although typically I would specify a bit more detail than this. This time I'm going to replace the tyres on one of my forklifts, so I'll select the asset. This time I'll use the Asset Search tool and describe the job. Now that is enough to save my work order, but I'll say a few more things. I'll give the job a priority of 3. A job type, which is the category of work of corrective maintenance, and I'll schedule it to start, let's say, next Friday. If I wish, I can also apply resources to the work order. Now, I think this is a job that will take the fitter about 2 hours to complete, so I'll go to the Trades tab and specify that. I'll use a trade code of fitter and an estimated duration of 2 hours. If I wish to apply the job to a specific fitter, then I can select it from the available list of fitters. I might also need a trades assistant for half an hour to help with the lifting, so I'll add a new line and I'll need him for about half an hour. I'm also going to add the materials requirements to the work order, which I do in the Spares tab here. Now I've got a number of options when I add materials to the work order. I can select items from the catalogue using this button here. I'll need a few bearings. These ones. And I estimate that I need 4 of them. When I close the job off, I'll issue these parts so they will become an actual consumed quantity rather than an estimate. I also need a pair of forklift tyres. Now, I don't hold them on the shelf, so I'll create a purchase order for my supplier to bring them in for the job. I'll click on Add Purchase Order, select my supplier, and then add the items that I wish to purchase for the job. Again, I can type in the supplier stock number or I can use a catalogue selection screen, and these are the items I purchased from that supplier. I'll have these ones today, and I'll need 2. Because I'm purchasing directly to the job, the tyres have been added to the work order as an estimate cost, and I have a hyperlink to the purchase order that I've ordered on. When the goods are received from the supplier, it will go from an estimated cost to an actual cost, and when the supplier's invoice arrives, it may update the cost of those tyres. I can do a great deal more in the work order. I can add documents on the Documents tab to put things like equipment manuals or safe work practices. I can assign permits on the Permits tab. I can perform a risk analysis on the job or a range of other features. But this is enough for this job, so I'll close it and return to the work order listing, where I can see that my work order has been added to my maintenance backlog. Now, at some point, the job will be complete and it will be up to me to close the work order off, moving it from the maintenance backlog to the asset history. The way that I do this is select the work order in the listing and click on the Close Work Order button at the bottom of the screen. Now, what I record on a closed work order will depend on what kind of reporting I want to produce after the fact. So what I'll do is put down the details that most of our customers would typically record. I'll say what actually happened on the job in the history description. And I'll put the actual duration that my tradesman spent on the job. So Greg Rich spent 1.5 hours on that. Dave Higgins spent 3/4 of an hour. And I also used another trades assistant for half an hour. I'll also issue the materials that were used. When I created the work order, I added the bearings on as an estimated quantity. Now that I'm closing it off, I'll issue them, taking the bearings from the shelf and putting them onto the work order. I'll add a 4 into the issue column. I can also add additional parts to the job that weren't in the original estimation. I used 4 of these seals. Now, the tyres that I purchased earlier were received from the supplier, and because they were received, they've already gone into the actual usage on the work order. When I received the supplier's invoice later on, then the costs of the tyres could be updated as a result of the file invoice price. Now, because I've added actual labour and actual materials to the job, this will have contributed to the actual cost of the job, which I can see here is more than I originally estimated it to be. When I close the History Work Order screen, I can see that the work order has dropped out of the work order listing and is no longer a part of my maintenance backlog. When I close the work order, it goes from the work order listing to the history listing where I can see it here. I can still edit closed work orders even though they're closed. I can add more parts or update any information I feel necessary. I can also lock this down so that it can only be done by an administrator. To supplement the MEX work order functionality, MEX also has a requests module. This allows people to request a maintenance activity. Once a request has been lodged in the system, the maintenance manager or another authorised person can elect to approve the request and then transfer it to a work order, adding it to the maintenance backlog. When the request is completed, the work order is also automatically completed. You can also enable a chain of email communications that will automatically notify the requester the progress of his request. Optionally, requests can be logged via MEXOps, which is a web application that can be distributed to a large number of users with a minimal effort. Now we'll have a look at the Preventative Maintenance module. A preventative maintenance schedule is used whenever you have a routine task that you want the system to automatically produce work orders for. For example, I might have a number of stairwell fans that I'm required to service every 3 months. I'd like MEX to automatically generate work orders for this service, so I create a preventative maintenance schedule, which will create a work order for each stairwell fan every 3 months. If I'm required to also perform a more comprehensive service annually, I would create a second preventative maintenance schedule to produce work orders every 12 months. And if I use the preventative maintenance's hierarchy option, then the annual service will override the 3 monthly service, and when both work orders are due, only the annual work order will be produced. When I create a preventative maintenance schedule, I will typically specify the details of the work order to be produced, the frequency at which work orders will be created, and the assets the work orders will be created for. To access the MEX Preventative Maintenance module, I click on the Preventative Maintenance icon in the MEX main menu here. This will open up the Preventative Maintenance listing, which is a list of all the routine maintenance schedules that I currently have defined in the system. To create a new preventative maintenance, I click on the New button in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. This will open up a blank Preventative Maintenance Details screen for me to enter the details of my new PM into. Now, in order to define a new preventative maintenance schedule, I have to say 3 things. What it is, which is a description of the task to be performed. What it happens to, which is the assets that the preventative maintenance will generate work orders for, and how often it happens, which will be the frequency. In this case, I'm performing a 3-monthly inspection on my stairwell fans. So my description would be stairwell fan 3-monthly inspection. The next stage is to say what it will happen to. There are 2 ways of going about this. I can either manually nominate a list of assets in the asset using tab here, where I can just specify which assets I want it to apply to. But what is more common is to specify a group of assets. If I select the asset type of stairwell fan up here, then MEX will locate each stairwell fan in my asset register and automatically associate them with this maintenance schedule. I can be more specific by specifying a manufacturer or a model number. But in this case, my one maintenance schedule will handle all models of stairwell fan, so I'll leave it at that. When I nominate what fans I'm going to include on my service, I also have to say when they were last serviced. It will default to today, but I would need to look at my records and say this stairwell fan was last serviced on, say, January the 27th, and this stairwell fan was serviced last week. I only have to do this on the creation of the maintenance schedule. As it begins to schedule work orders, these dates will be automatically updated. The last thing I need to say is how often it happens, which will be back on the Details tab. In this case, it's a 3-monthly service, so we will enter a frequency of 3 months. I can schedule maintenance in 2 ways: by calendar, which is days, weeks, months, or years, or by usage, which is hours or kilometres, or any other type of reading that indicates the usage of the asset. If I specify usage-based, then I need to enter in regular readings for my assets. For example, if I have a 250-hour service on my forklift, I would have to, on a typically weekly or fortnightly basis, enter an hour meter reading for that forklift so that MEX can begin to schedule work orders. In conjunction with the frequency, I can also specify a lead time. Now, this is a 3-monthly service. I might like the work order to be generated, say, 5 days in advance of the actual due date of the job. I would say this in the lead time field. I've put 5 days in here. So if one of these work orders is due on, say, the 20th, it will be generated on the 15th, with a due date on the 20th. Now, this is enough for the preventative maintenance to begin scheduling work orders for my stairwell fans. From here on, I'm adding the details that I would like to appear on the work orders that are generated by the preventative maintenance. We'll give them a priority of, we'll say 3, and a job type of PM. My service has a checklist of tasks that I want performed during the service, so I'll add these tasks onto the Tasks tab. Like complete a visual inspection, check the belt tension, give it a clean, and check and possibly replace my filters. The other things that I might do is specify the labour requirements. I think this might take a fitter, we'll say half an hour. Nominate any materials that might happen on the job. There we go, we'll add these. And possibly add documentation. If I add things like safe work practices or permits onto the preventative maintenance, those documents will propagate down to any work orders that the preventative maintenance generates. That's typically what I would put in a basic preventative maintenance, so I'll close the screen and see that my PM has been added to the listing. An interesting feature provided with the preventative maintenance module is the scheduler, which can be accessed by clicking on the scheduler button at the bottom of the preventative maintenance listing. The scheduler does not generate work orders, rather it predicts what work orders will be generated by your PM program. I can see here a list of the assets that are included in my preventative maintenance. For example, this inlet feed pump. I can see in the schedule that for the month of December, the 12-monthly service is going to be due on that pump. If I click on the little coloured box, it will take me to the details of that preventative maintenance, where I can edit it to, for example, move that service forward or back for that pump. You can see the hierarchy of your preventative maintenance servicing taking effect. For example, my 12-monthly is due in December. 3 months later in March, the 3-monthly service is due, followed by the 6-monthly, and so on. The scheduler is an excellent way to check that your preventative maintenance is in fact going to generate work orders for your asset base as you'd like it, with the hierarchy and intervals that you suggest. If you prefer a listing view rather than an interactive calendar, then you can retrieve that by clicking on the List button. You nominate a time range, I'd like to see the list of work orders to be generated for the next year, and click on the Schedule button. And here's your predicted preventative maintenance work orders presented as a listing. If you've nominated the parts to be used on each of your preventative maintenance schedules, then you can click on the Required Spare Parts button, and that will present a list of all the spare parts that you will require to complete your preventative maintenance routine within that time period. The next thing we'll have a look at is the optional Stores module. The Stores module is the inventory system that can be purchased with MEX. It's a fairly comprehensive system that integrates seamlessly with the MEX maintenance functionality. The Stores module can maintain a store's catalogue, which is a list of the items that you either hold on the shelf or order in as required. When you look at the details of an individual item, we have a catalogue number and description, but we also have things like part categorization, physical locations, and minimum reorder points. We can also record the supplier the item is purchased from, any documentation associated with the item like MSDSs. We have a complete transactional history of the item, and we can also see what machines the item is used on. With the catalogue listing also comes an automatic replenishment system, which can be used to replenish any stock that has fallen below its minimum stock level. Purchase orders for replenishment can be automatically generated from this screen. We can also generate purchase orders, receipt items from suppliers, process supplier invoices, and a range of other purchasing functionality. With purchase orders, you can also use an electronic authorization system, where a purchase order cannot be sent to a supplier until it has been approved by a person with appropriate financial authority. There are a range of other functions within the Stores module, such as materials reservations, a central requisitioning system, stocktake, goods receipt, a list of your suppliers, and store-specific reporting. The last thing that we'll discuss is the MEX reporting capabilities. MEX has over 200 standard reports and an additional 36 inventory and purchasing related reports. You can also select from these reports to create your personal favourites list. Producing a report out of MEX is relatively simple. You select the report you want to produce, and that brings up a set of parameters that's appropriate to that report. You fill in your report parameters, and then you can either preview the report, print it, or reports can also be emailed or exported to a variety of file formats. I'll preview it. Using the MEX event scheduler, you can also set up reports to automatically email themselves to a distribution list on a schedule that you nominate. In addition to the reporting function, you can also have the integrated MEX dashboard, which can be accessed from here. The dashboard is a list of 99 charts, graphs, lists, and other KPI measures that can be produced through the web interface. For example, this KPI here is the backlog per trade code, in both the number of jobs and also man-hours. The KPIs are separated into different categories, and again, you can establish a favourites list of the KPIs that you choose to track. MEX also comes with an integrated report editor that you can use to create your own reports or edit any of the existing reports. Finally, we have the MEX mobility capabilities. MEX can be used on a variety of mobile devices, including Android, Windows, and iOS tablets. If your work takes you outside of a network area, then the MEX iOS application is your best choice, as it has what we call the Go Mobile or Disconnected function. This means that you can synchronize your iPad while you're within network range, go to a remote area, and continue to use MEX in using the typical day-to-day functions, like raising, carrying out and closing work orders, performing an inspection, or doing that end-of-month stocktake. Once you are next back in the office, you can synchronize your iPad and all your changes will be uploaded to the MEX database, and any new information from MEX will come back down onto your tablet. You can perform most of the day-to-day functions on the MEX iOS app, including inspections, audits, parts issues and stock takes, and of course, work order functionality. This combination of internet, browser and mobile device access means that you'll be able to capture all of the information that you need to effectively maintain your equipment. If you want to know more about MEX, you can contact our sales department at sales@mex.com.au, or you can give us a call on +617 3392 4777. Thank you.